All right. So I'm finally putting the cap on the tournament. And I get the details box. There you go. The missing game. All right. This was arguably a really stupid game, but here we are. I had this rack and I played woke to stay woke. All plays here suck. Everything is terrible. And I played a pretty terrible move. The idea behind woke is that it scores points. And that's about it. It scores points and it sets up HUE for 17, keeping an eye. The problem with woke is that it takes A hook, N hook, and it doesn't really do so much to inhibit Scott from doing anything. So maybe just playing owie and getting rid of one more vowel. This spot isn't a huge threat, this 8L spot. Or maybe just exchanging down to HE and trying to be the first to hit a junk hook. Whoever hits first junk hook is going to be a big favorite on this board. But yeah, lots of plays to consider. This is the one I chose. Scott played Tad for 20 points. And I had to exchange here because I drew 3 more vowels. So I did what I maybe should have done last move and exchanged down to HE. And here, was it dot that he played? Got. Oh, I need to switch around the things. Junk. Got. Okay, now Scott has 67, I have 19. And I'm only doing this because I have to finish. You know, I have to do. What did I do here? Really? There's a company in Canada at least called Got Junk. I thought it was funny that he played Got underneath Junk, but oh, I didn't have the O. Okay, I see now. Okay, because I would have just played Ho for sure. So I played Hey for 17. So what a horrible move. Like, what am I even accomplishing? The reason I played Hey is because it takes an N hook. So maybe I was trying to bingo underneath. I'm definitely at a pretty big disadvantage here. I can't score anything. The board isn't really that great. This four row is potentially going to be important at some point in the game. And with DEEN, I guess I'm somewhat primed to hit that spot sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to bingo here. I'm fishing. So Hey comes down. Scott plays XU, just completely taking care of the lane that I opened. And I draw NOO. I could play Odeon, OE, Donnie, Do, Wooden, Done. I think I played Done. Oh yeah. This is funny. I played Done here to set up an E hook, which is hilarious because in a very recent game at a tournament, I chickened out of Done, not Donee, but Donne, a very similar word. But yeah, I really hated my position here and thought that I needed to make something happen. And I was hoping that Scott's rack was very difficult, maybe full of consonants. Considering his last few plays, he's playing consonants that could lead me to believe that he has like clunky racks. This actually doesn't do terribly on a sim. But yeah, other than playing Done, like I either have to open a huge scoring spot that he doesn't need a specific letter to use, or keep duplicate ends, basically. So Done was my choice to try and bingo again on the 4 column, or maybe, and I was also trying to like cheese him a bit. Hopefully, like he misses the E hook or something. But yeah, I really don't know what I was supposed to do in that spot. He played Crazed for 24. He said he kept ST. Okay, so he could play Czars. Seems pretty good to try and get rid of the lane and keep a good leave of ST. And I draw into this rack and I play Fire. And again, it's just like this board is so bad. Scott is playing really good defense. He has a lead, and basically my only saving grace is this potential four row. But at some point, Scott could really just play a word on the 6 row to like make TO or something if he can, or even just TE, and it'll make it a lot harder for me to bingo on this 4 row. So things are really not looking great, but I'm only down 30, so anything can still happen. This scoring spot is a thing, but he takes care of that and plays Orbit. And now the scoring spot is not a thing. And yeah, I really didn't know what to do on most of these turns. I figured I should leave this T open. I have plays that seem pretty good, but that block the T. So I'm trying to leave lanes open. I decided to play Pro. And the reason I played Pro is, again, I'm trying to like bingo maybe to this T. I don't know how often I bingo to this T with MEENS, but I'm also trying to bingo here. And I felt like I had a decent chance of drawing into some 7-letter word on the 4 row after Pro. But again, I'm really treading water. Eventually I would want to like play something maybe on the 7 row to set up an S hook on the 6 row. But I didn't see an opportunity to do that just yet. Here, Scott plays Cry and Dexy, just scoring more points using a hook, not opening anything new. And you get to see sort of... Oh, okay, I didn't have an N. What? Wait. I don't know. I wrote down that I had an L here, so maybe I had an L with Pro. No, I had the N the whole time. Okay, so I messed up. So here I played ES for 15. And this was a good play for me because I'm setting up my second S with Joe's. And it's potentially hard for Scott to do anything about it if he doesn't have another S, but he does. He does have another S. Told me he had an S, but apparently he didn't have a play with it, so he exchanged 5. And that allows me to bingo. With, funnily enough, the phony kind of that I just got away with against Jocelot in a blindfolded game. Loments, which is only a noun, lament. Which puts me ahead by 27. Hi, Gertie. Scott plays Volta 32, retaking the lead. And I draw the blank, but I draw 6 vowels to go with it. And I play Etui just to keep scoring a little bit. I could exchange here and potentially make myself more likely to bingo next turn, but the score is close and I sort of wanted to block this E. Even if it inhibits my own plays, it inhibits Scott's potentially a lot more. Because since I have the blank, I'm more likely to be able to bingo. He's more likely to have to like score points. And Etui blocks this E pretty well. But Scott makes a really good play here of modeling for 34. Still managing to score points and maintain his lead. And now I drew an S, but 2 more vowels. And I decide to play OI for 10. Basically, now that the board has opened up after modeling, I'm no longer worried about blocking this T. I could leave it open for myself and play OI somewhere else or exchange. But again, I thought I was in good position since I had the blank. Even if you're losing and you have the blank, you might actually be likelier to win than your opponent. And I felt like I was pretty likely to win at this point if I just drew into a bingo. But Scott keeps on the scoring pressure, not that way, but this way. Not this way, but that way. Vol for 30. And Vol is a pretty good play because not only does it block, it prevents plays from the B column existing because of the V, but it also makes this less easy to hook. AM only takes an A and an I and a P. Doesn't take an S. But the problem with plays like this in high level play, actually, you'll see often enough that if someone has the last of a certain letter and you make a play like va, they can set their word up. Like if I play something like HAME, for example, and I have the last S's and blank or whatever, if there's only one S left, for example, it gets extremely difficult to deal with this because you've made a blocking play, but it also blocks you from defending against plays like this. Of course, you can always play a 3-letter word to this V in this specific example, but that might actually be worse for you. I might even get a triple with shame. So although this does do good things, it actually, in the long term or medium term, could actually spell disaster for Scott as the player who's trying to maintain his lead. So I draw 2 consonants, but it's 2 consonants that don't actually bingo. I figure that after OI, pretty much any 2 consonant draw would bingo on this 4 row, but I was wrong. The BF actually doesn't bingo, and I can play beam to reopen an S hook on the E column. But the reason I didn't want to do this, and this is a very, very tactical game. The reason I didn't want to play beam is it actually allows potentially more plays to come down on the E column than normal, which would actually block both the E column and the 4 row at the same time. I would still be left with potential bingos on the L column, but it would be a huge hit. So instead of beam, I decided to play ISPA for 30, which does take care of the L column, which I don't really want, but it scores points, allows me to potentially bingo through this A, and maintains the pressure of the 4 row existing. So ISBA is my play. It also brings the score close enough that I don't actually necessarily need to bingo to win this game if he has some troublesome racks, for example. And here, Scott plays Weary, whoops, for 22, trying to block the stuff that he can block easily and score points. So he's blocking the A and I guess the B, but no one ever bingos to a B. So he plays Weary, and he's up by a lot, and I get my bingo down. So I had the blank, and I drew the other blank. So I had this rack and played Fig Tree. So I definitely didn't need the other blank, but drawing it was actually really good for me because it actually just means that Scott didn't have it. Which, if he did have the blank after bingo here, he could just bingo back on the 3 row and it'd be game over. So Fig Tree is the only bingo. And it leaves 4 in the bag. So I definitely want to play this, even though I could lose instantly to bingos. I still want to play it and just hope that he doesn't draw into something with these letters. I'm hoping he's like drawing the Q or something. But I definitely need to bingo in this spot. So Fig Tree comes down, and Scott plays QI for 32, and he's actually ahead by 3 still. But it was very good for him to draw the Q. The Q can score points, but even when the Q scores points, it could be an impediment because it requires specific letters to be used. In this case, he needed to have an I and he needed to play his I. And oftentimes, because it's sort of a forced play, a play that you basically have to make, that's much better than any other play. Sometimes forced plays actually leave you with very, very bad racks. But this is also a case where QI was probably totally fine and natural, but I think Scott would have much rather not drawn the Q and maybe had a bingo on the 3 row, which would have been potentially pretty likely considering that he's been able to try and manage his rack a little bit every single turn, especially with Ball and Weary. It's possible his rack was close to a bingo, but he drew the Q. And so now no one's going to bingo because I'm clearly just going to play here if I can. I end up playing punter. And this instance, I'm down 3 with 2 in the bag. But because I can play for 30 points, go ahead by 27, and keep only 1 letter, the likelihood of me winning is pretty high. Because if I draw almost any combination of letters here, I will be able to go out next turn. And the only issue is when I draw something like 2 I's or IE potentially. Those were problematic draws, and I was obviously looking at that and seeing if there was anything I could do that was better than just punter, but it seems like this was by far my best bet. And I'll ask championship player, maybe championship player will give me some insight about the pre-endgame position where it excels as an engine, but often it's not good enough. But yeah, AE, if I draw AE, so it's one thing to see that I don't have any outplays. It's another thing to try and imagine being down or being ahead by 27 points, not having an outplay, and Scott being able to create a sequence that wins the game for him. So if, for example, Scott has LASH and has TIE to go out next turn, he's certainly going to win this game if he has halides on his rack. But that requires both of the vowels to be in the bag. So it looked like the threats that he had to win the game also, the threats that he had to win the game, notwithstanding specific draws, also like um, what's the word I'm looking for? The threats he has of sequences that will beat me are also threats that exist simultaneously with the threat of drawing two vowels. So if I draw AE, I have the threat of playing area, which Scott will certainly want to block. And that could actually prevent him from scoring enough in his sequence of plays to outscore me. Okay, Quackle's saying some crazy shit about this play. Yeah, Quackle doesn't know what it's talking about. Sorry I made you guys wait. It likes prune. Maybe prune is better. It's possible that prune is better. Because that draws into more higher scoring plays, I guess, but also prevents plays like Lash from coming down. But yeah, if like Scott has this rack, he wins. He just has to play Lash, and he wins pretty easily. If he has this rack, Lash will still win as well. Certainly. Yeah. And what else? With this rack, he might have to do something a bit more fancy, but TITI. Wow. Okay. With this rack, it's a tie after this insane play of tail. So I would have liked to have been able to go through these scenarios in my head, but this being able to see ahead and see that if I draw specifically EE, Scott will obviously want to block a G, but seeing that he can block a G, play tail for 5, and set up sight for next turn. Let's look at the sequence. I can try and like if I play something like AI to block sight, he just goes out with hist. So I want to play AE to block hist, and then he goes out with sight for 30 and ties. That's insane. Okay. So yeah, but these are the draws that you want to look at, like when you're considering a play like punter. So I see that if I draw EE, it's a tie at worst. If I draw EI, I lose. If I draw II, I lose. And that's pretty easy to see, like the EI and II stuff, because I know that he has Lash. But the other stuff is a lot harder to look at. But if I draw, I think, are there any other vowel combinations I can draw? Yeah, AI. Let's see what happens here. Here, yeah, he can't. He doesn't have enough. Wow. He has to play title to block aria. And I win with Aga. Okay. And he goes out with shame and loses by 1. That's insane. Anyways, what I managed to do in this position is notice that I would certainly lose with like an II draw. And probably lose with a couple other draws, or maybe lose, but it was complicated enough that I wasn't totally sure that those draws were death. Because if I only have one outplay that I'm threatening, it can sort of mess up Scott's style enough that he doesn't have a high enough scoring sequence, as we saw with some of the draws here. He is blocking my outplay and going out before me, but it's costing him too much. But yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so punter seems pretty good. And my draw was perfect. Oops. Scott had Laertes, and from this perspective, I have AEH. I'm going out in multiple spots. There's no way for him to score enough to win, as I've just blocked his bingo. So he challenged the word punter, which felt good. Felt good to be a punter and to get that play challenged. But he challenged because that's his only way to win, is if punter is not a word. And I went out with Hay and won 383 to 321. A very low scoring tactical game. And I spoke to Scott after this game and I said, like, we always have these games. Like, it's just this like tactical struggle. And something happens and one of us wins, usually me, because I get some sort of luck, which is exactly what happened here. And he was like, yeah, it's so totally weird. Like, this doesn't happen against anyone else. And I was like, really? Like, I thought this was sort of your style. I thought he likes to get down and dirty on these sorts of boards. But it just goes to show that my experience is not necessarily reality for everybody. But yeah, this was a really tough victory. I probably could have played something different with Woke. HAE seems weird. Done seems weird. And Pro, who knows? Yeah, lots of questionable situations. I might have played fine, but I might have been able to improve as well. But yeah, very low scoring game. It's rare you see a total of 700, barely 700 points in the top echelon. So that's it. Finally found this game. And that puts a final cap on the Scrabble Players Championship coverage. And so that's it. I'm done. No more. No more. No more reliving this summer of blunders. Anyways, thank you YouTube for watching. I will end the video now. Goodbye.